the death penalty is a moral issue for some and a policy issue for others. However, it is also a government program with related costs and possible benefits. Many people assume that the state saves money by employing the death penalty since an executed person no longer requires confinement, healthcare, and related expenses, but in the modern application of capital punishment, that assumption has been proven wrong. Let's take a look at what the cost per execution in Texas is. When pursuing life without parole in courts, the average cost is $1.3 million compared to when pursuing the death penalty in courts is $3.8 million. So, per death row inmate, you are saving $2.5 million on average. That's a potential $810 million per year. And there are 213 inmates awaiting execution in Texas. And in most cases in which the death penalty is sought, do not end up with the death penalty being imposed. And once a death sentence is imposed, the most likely outcome of the case is that the conviction or death sentence will be overturned in courts. Most defendants who are sentenced to death essentially end up spending life in prison anyways, but at a highly inflated cost because the death penalty was involved in the process. So you're essentially just lighting money on fire. And in this next slide, it shows that Texans are beginning to protest on the issue as well. Almost all people who face the death penalty cannot afford their own attorney. The state must assign public defenders or court-appointed lawyers to represent them and pay for the cost of the prosecution as well. This results in about a $1 million tax that the people of Texas have to pay, which is unfair considering the high cost and unneeded execution of these death row inmates. This next slide shows a quote from Police Chief James Abbott of West Orange County. He states, "Give a law enforcement professional like me that $250 million, and I'll show you how to reduce crime. The death penalty isn't anywhere on my list." Law enforcement officials have been able to link no evidence or data that the death penalty is a deterrent for violent crimes, and the price of it is just unreal. The chart to the right of the quote shows that the difference in each category when pursuing the death penalty and illustrates that about $2 million is saved on average when you do not pursue the death penalty at all and just pursue life in prison. This just goes to show how much money is wasted on unneeded things when, like Police Chief James Abbott said, he could be using that money to go to a better cause that will actually deter crime and not the death penalty. This next slide shows a photo of Clayton Lockett. He was born in 1975 to a drug-using mother. She abandoned him when he was 3 years old, and he was raised by his father, who severely abused him throughout his childhood. His father gave him drugs starting at the age of 3 and encouraged him to steal and not get caught. He then grew up to a life of crime and ended up murdering a man in a robbery gone wrong. I believe Lockett was dealt a bad hand in life and maybe just needed more direction early on in life. On the date of his execution in April 19th, 2019, Lockett was administered an untested mixture of drugs that had not previously been used for executions in the United States. Although the execution was stopped, Lockett died 43 minutes after being sedated. He writhed, groaned, convulsed, and spoke during the process and attempted to rise from the execution table 14 minutes into the procedure, despite having been declared unconscious. He later died of a heart attack. That was his official cause of death. So, what my question is to you is, why are the taxpayers' dollars going to unreliable executions that are far too expensive to be spending on the scummiest people on earth when we could be spending those extra hard-earned dollars on neighborhood cleanups, children's educations, scholarships, or implementing a program for young children that would help children like Clayton Lockett before it is too late? Instead of spending that $850 million on criminals, let's spend it on the youth of Texas.